The views and opinions expressed in these historical letters that may contain vernacular used in the World War II era, the post-war era, and the Cold War era do not reflect the views and opinions of any of the individuals involved with this project, including, but not limited to, the podcast's creators. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Love Sweetie podcast. This is episode 2, and we're delighted to be back with you this week. How are you doing this week, Jamie?
I'm doing very well. I'm excited to hear our third letter today, so I'm excited to get into that.
Oh my gosh, yeah, we have a very special episode for everybody today. We're going to go through 3 letters, as we did the previous week in episode 1. We're going to dive into the letters pretty quick today. So if you missed episode 0 or episode 1, we strongly encourage you to go back and listen to those, especially episode 0 that goes over the project, because we're not going to do that so much today. We're going to pick up where we left off. Previously, Sweetie herself was on summer break in 1941. She's going to Parsons College, which again, I think I mentioned this in our first episode. Parsons College is no longer in operation in Iowa. It's really funny. I was actually just talking to someone. I was at a choir rehearsal last night. I was telling her about the podcast, Jamie. I didn't tell you about this. And she said she's from Iowa. And when I mentioned Parsons, she knew the name. So even though Parsons, yeah, it closed in 1973, but it was, I guess, pretty well known. I said, yeah, in Fairfield. And she said, yeah, Parsons College. She also explained to me how to pronounce a town's name that I didn't know. I don't think it comes up in the letters, but there's this great town that I always thought was pronounced Chillicothe, and it's Chillicothe, like coffee, but then with like a TH. So yeah, anyway, it was really neat to run into someone from Iowa, tell them about the podcast, and was delighted to know that they had heard of Parsons. But anyway, we'd left off with Sweetie in the summer break in 1941, heading to Parsons and planning going back into Parsons in the fall with her boyfriend, Ed, which is really important and is going to figure a lot in tonight's letter. So if you're looking for some boyfriend drama, some relationship drama in the letters,
we have it.
I think, how does Sweetie say it? You know, get ready with your bucket for the tears.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to need a sponge or a mop. You're going to clean your floors with the amount of tears.
But our first letter is we get introduced to one of the siblings.
Oh yeah, and it's so exciting to hear about the siblings. In the last episode, we did hear about Bob, and we're going to hear about more siblings, and we're also going to hear a little bit more about Bob's relationships. So we'll get in some details about how to follow us more at the end of this episode. But for now, let's just jump into this first episode and enjoy. Richland, Iowa, Saturday, 7:00 p.m. Dear Jean, I got home okay. I tried to help Bob start the car, Florence's, but it could not be done, especially since I was so inexperienced in the art of car pushing. The best I could manage was bumping the Plymouth along, and then catching it on the bounce or rebounce, bump it along some more. However, it did have its advantages, for I met all 3 of Florence's brothers. While Bob was first looking about the car, little Vernie came out. I was in the process of backing the Chevy up to Florence's Plymouth, and when I stepped out and said, "Hello there, Vernie," he looked at me rather surprised, and smiling he asked, "Hell, are you Bob's sister Jean?" I said, "No, I'm Bob's other sister Catherine." Bob just stood by grinning to see what would happen. He accepted me with a satisfied yet non-committal, "Oh," and started talking to Bob about starting the car. While he was tying a rope to both bumpers, a sort of short, yet not so very short either, fellow with blonde, brown, medium curly hair walked up. He was Russ, the 16-year-old, and after introductions were performed, a third nice-looking guy, a little taller than Russ in dress clothes, walked out carrying a little zipper bag, and he was Paul. Bob introduced me to him, and so I met the 3 Messieurs Boudreau. All right, so I'm just going to pause here for a moment because we're talking about the 3 Monsieur Boudreau. Bob and Florence are in this very serious relationship. Sweetie is going to visit with Bob, and she's been able to meet now Florence's 3 brothers, of which she's really excited to get to meet some of the expected in-laws. Really, here are the brothers-in-law. They're going to be coming along, and what's the first thing we note is her amazing inferiority complex, because what's the first thing she thinks? They're like, "Oh, are you Jean?" Jean's the favorite sister. She's like, no. And then they're like, oh, okay. And they go about their day. They're going to take care of the car. But yeah, just to talk about Boudreaux, Florence is Florence Boudreaux. They're not married at this time, but she's in a very serious relationship with Sweetie's brother, Bob. So
And
we'll
this is
continue.
the first time that Catherine has met.
That has met the brothers. Yeah. So, and we'll go from there. I was quite impressed by the apparent ease they showed, even Verney, when they were introduced to me. Paul especially asked if I was the sister in Fairfield, and soon left. They're nice fellows, all of them. If I'd met Rose and her mother, I'd know them all now, and I'm still for Bob and Florence. Those people are nice enough that the fact that they're Catholics doesn't even enter into the acquaintance at all. I'm pleased no end. Yeah, and I think we do have to pause here as well.
We do have to pause here. It's funny. As a I was baptized Catholic. My father's family's Catholic, and so it's kind of funny to hear this little jab, this little towards the religion. But but like we had said in previous episodes, these are letters of their time.
Yeah, it's definitely a different time. I can say that the Demaree family, they're Presbyterian, and I was raised Lutheran, and I know that the times have changed. There's a lot less of a divide between the various Christian denominations. And clearly, Florence herself and the Boudreaux, who are Catholic, Florence has transcended this divide to be with Bob, and the family's okay with that. Kay has, Catherine's going to go by Kay at times, Sweetie. She has no problem with this. But it's just interesting to see sort of that 40s mentality of, well, we're usually, we're this denomination, and she's that denomination, but she's okay. I can get over it.
They have given them something. They approve.
Yeah. So they're approving, and that's very nice. But yeah, we had to pause there for a moment because that's not as frequently, I think, heard or seen these days. All right. From the way they all talked, I thought perhaps they were disappointed at having met me instead of Bob's favorite sister. I felt a little jealousy at Verney's, but I guess it's okay. You were the first to hold MA, you got the tiger eye secondhand first, and had the distinction of being able to write to the rest of the family about it, Florence's mother and sister Rose. But I got to see the male members of her family first. They would have to deflate me by not having been satisfied with Catherine rather than Jean. Damn it anyway. I went the gravel road through Sharon Center, where I stopped to see Marjorie Schwimley and gossip a while. And then on to Wellman, where I saw Merville Wideline, and likewise stopped to gossip and pass on to Richland. I did not stop to see Margie, for I felt I'd already spent too much time and must hurry on. Besides, I feel that Margie's feeling is not as sincere as it used to be. These girls are Parsons girls, with whom I shall have, you guess, associations and contacts this year, and I feel they're more valuable to me. I got home about noon, and soon after, Frank, Mom, and I went to Fairfield. I got a new $3 permanent that is very long. I did not get it cut, but just a little. Frank went to see the draft board, and he said that because of such a large National Guard that left in the spring, they have not yet called any draftees, and that if Frank did not get his commission, he very probably would not be called for 3 months. But when we got home, Myra came running with word that they'd been phoning around trying to find Frank to deliver a telegram. We finally ended up by rolling to Packwood to get the telegram from Fort Omaha asking when Frank could report for a final physical exam. Frank went to Fairfield. I was sick with a headache from the permanent and a little sick at my stomach. To tell he could come on Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, and this morning Frank got a telegram saying, come Wednesday at 11 o'clock. Frank sent one saying he'd be there at 10 o'clock Wednesday. That's an awful lot of telegrams if you ask me, but entirely at the expense of the government, so I guess it is okay. At least it's a quick way to carry on your correspondence. Yeah, and I think we absolutely want to stop here. There's a lot to look at. The first thing is about Frank. Mm-hmm. So in the first episode, we met Bob, who's in the service, and now we get to hear about her other brother, Frank. And Frank is clearly also going into the service and being called up. And we should remind everybody, if you didn't listen to the first episode, the timing of this is that World War II is very much, again, it's going on in Europe. America has not entered the war at all, because we're just in September of 1941. And then we talk this amazing part about communications by telegram and running after trying to find people, and the difference between today and back then. And I love how she says, this is the quick way to carry on correspondence. What do you think about all that, Jamie? Just like the comparison to today's communications to back then.
Well, it's just funny because they were calling around. So they obviously knew places
Right.
where he would be. They were calling around to different houses probably that he might be at and trying to find him. And then somebody, ran out there.
Hmm.
No, then they went to Omaha
Right.
and then he was able, and then he wrote, I mean, but that was quick for them.
Right. That's fast. Gotta go find a telegram. Gotta get this telegram over here.
If I text somebody and they don't text me back right away, I get
Hmm.
upset. like,
Right.
like,
Maybe
can you?
within minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't even imagine writing a telegram, sticking it in there, and then going about my day. Like
Hmm.
this is, it's crazy, and it reminds me of like when Sweetie was traveling with the meat salesman,
Yeah.
and
Oh, yeah.
how much longer everything takes. But they probably to them this was
Oh, this
going
is
so
great.
quickly.
Yeah, this is wonderful. Like,
Oh,
oh, okay, we got a telegram. We don't have to wait for the mailman.
well, yeah, yeah.
That's cool. Like they're calling and someone's running out of the house and we can go find a place to get another telegram out. But also the government's paying for it. So
Yeah.
we don't have to
And
pay for all
oh, sure, the government's, sweetie,
that.
sweetie,
Yeah.
you're paying for it, but
You're
okay.
you're ultimately paying for
You're all
it. So, because you pay for the government. But she's still 18 and figuring things out, and as far
it's
as she knows,
we won't
yeah,
hold it.
it's okay. Yeah, we won't hold it against her. Yeah. So anyway, Frank, another brother going into the
Mhm.
service. So we'll continue on from here. Frank is leaving for Springfield tonight at 2 o'clock. Though we don't know about Bob's coming. He should have been here by now. He expects to drive about 8 hours, and they'll leave Springfield at 8 a.m. Monday morning, no later. We're still planning upon a trip to Iowa City on Tuesday to go to see Dr. O'Brien. We shall await your letter as to time. Mary and Bill and 2 kids came rolling up at about 11 o'clock this morning in their 1928 Rolls Royce. It doesn't even merit capital letters. Frank, Bill, and company loaded in some of their furniture, and Bill left the premises to go to the farm. Marge and the kids stayed back. I almost went with him, but decided a 4-hour ride in that ancient can was more than I could take. He'll come back tomorrow to take the second and supposedly last trip and load to Brandon. He's more of an optimist than I. The truck is not fit for a trip to Iowa City, and besides the way Bill goes, it would be a long way out of the road. Marge said they'd come in the Chrysler to see you. Christopher is such a big fellow, 14 pounds at 10 weeks. He smiles and goos a lot and loves Bill. He picks Marge out of a crowd and talks to her more than anyone. Emma was pleased to come back. She greeted Grandma Demaree very nicely and asked for a drink. I took her to the pump, and she stopped in the middle of the drink to ask, Aunt Sweetie, is Ed coming tonight? Right now she's gone uptown to an ice cream social with Myra, and to a show, I believe. Yeah, and there's a couple just quick notes here. Grandma Demaree being referenced here is Sweetie's mother, Laura. And then when she says, I took her to the pump, this is actually the water pump that they're going outside of the yard to go get a drink of water.
That's
So
what I was
for
wondering.
anybody that wanted to confirm, absolutely, this is the one. And they live, and this is rural Iowa. So that's perfectly normal for them.
And can we talk about Mary and Bill? I'm so
Oh, sure. Yeah. Let me go back real quick. So, Marge and, well, Margaret, the sister, is married to Bill, and his last name is Bolton. So Christopher is their son, and then their daughter is MA. So that's who we're talking about when we go through the family members there. Yeah. All right. I got a letter from Ed today, Jean, and as per true Catherine Demaree style, I've built myself up for a terrific letdown. I'm afraid, however, I shall hold on till the last dog is dead and buried, and I'm going to go to Parsons just as long as I can hold on to him. Damn it, anyway, why do I always do things like that? The folks are planning on a trip to see the Indiana folks, and as usual, I'm going to get left. School will begin the 7th, and so I shall not get to go. I've written to my YWCA little sister, and I should hear from her quite soon. The YWCA cabinet met this weekend in Fairfield to make out a program of get acquainted parties that should be fun. Though college will be hell if Ed decides he's through with me. There's a 3-to-1 ratio of more women than men, and I'd sure stand one hell of a chance if I lose Ed. Perhaps I'll only go for one semester. I know I'll quit then if such things do happen. Maybe I'm crossing my bridges before I get there, but then I don't know. Anyway, I'll be prepared. I'd rather you did not mention this in your letters to us here, as it is you I picked to let off a little steam. Sucker. Well, goodbye now. Call just came from Bob, and Frank and I are going to meet him in Iowa City. Doubt if we'll see you, though. Maybe. Love, Sweetie. Write to me, will you? Phew! This letter smells, and my stationery doesn't match. Oh, hell. What's the use? Yeah, we get that nice, fun little tag at the end. We get
That's
her
funny.
little moment.
It's funny because her stationery doesn't match.
Mm-hmm.
And that's,
Yep.
I think, what a problem to have. I'm so sorry. Oh.
She's very concerned about competition at college.
Mm-hmm.
Feeling her boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
And she's also very much only going to college for her boyfriend. At least that's what we're hearing. She's being
That's what
quite
it
honest
sounds
about
like.
that.
Well, that's what she says. She's like, I'll go to Parsons as long as I got Ed.
Yeah, but after that, if he's not there, oh well to academics. Which is gonna really cause her parents to wonder what's going on. And we're going to get to that by the end of this episode. But let me go ahead and I'm going to share my screen so we can look at some photos here, Jamie, about some of these individuals. And I think this one's probably the most important. This is from the very late 1930s. There we go. All right. So if you can see my screen, right? We're good on screen.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So here are the 5 siblings. So now that we've met all 5 members of the Demaree family, the kids, from left to right, just so we can go over this. So Robert Chester's on the left. And then we have Margaret, and she's the oldest child. She was the first, she's the eldest sibling. Frank is right in the middle. And then we've got Jean to Frank's right, and then Sweetie's on the end, who doesn't look particularly happy to be in this photo.
No.
Frank really doesn't either. He's not really smiling too much. But she just looks like she's sort of stuck having to take this photo. It's that particular view, but it's a wonderful photo of the 5 of them together. It's one of the few photos that we do have of the 5 of them, especially in this age range. I believe this photo was taken somewhere around 1937 or 1938. So since we're in 1941, in this photo, Sweetie's about 15 or 16 years old.
Yes, and you figure at this age too, she's definitely like, oh, please take the stupid picture.
Yeah.
It's not. I'm not sure what the photography was like at that time, but
right.
That they definitely probably had to have. You had one shot. You wanted to get it right, and it's a lovely picture. I mean, it's a lovely example of like, the different outfits, and I love the fact that they have the same fabric dress.
Right. Yeah. There's definitely a lot of sewing that's going to be talked about in this podcast. And all of the women are going to be able to make a lot themselves. And so what I suspect here is that, especially for Jean and for Sweetie, that Laura, the mother, probably made both outfits out of the same cloth. And it actually brings me back to like watching The Sound of Music, right? That famous scene. Mm-hmm. Where she's dressing all the kids by creating their outfits out of the curtains. Now, I don't think these are curtains.
No.
But it's that, yeah, probably not. But these are very, very obvious to me that it's most likely that Laura at least made the 2 dresses on the right. Mm-hmm. So, awesome. And then we do have another photo here to share with everybody. And this is just so we can see a picture here of Florence. So
it's just such a lovely picture.
It's a wonderful photo, and I was delighted to know that this was available. And it's the right time, too. This is clearly from the early 1940s, and she's smiling and happy. So if we were thinking about Robert, right, from the first photo, and then he's dating Florence, here's the picture of Florence Boudreau. So it's great that this survived, and we get to see Florence.
It's just so cute. Look at that. I love the bow. The bow.
Yeah, the really giant hat, the really giant bow.
Well, I mean, hats, man. I love
Yeah.
hats. And this is,
Mhm.
and like I said, the fashion for me is like one of the most interesting aspects of these letters is like having because she describes the different
Does.
fashions and stuff. So when you get to see such an example
Oh
of,
yeah. And then I love the pin coordinated with the belt. Right? So we see that wonderful, yeah, it's all balanced. People, for hats, we were just talking about the hats. There's the field of millinery, right? That's the creation of hats. The milliners are the hat makers. And a lot of them have gone out of business. A lot of them find business today working for theatrical productions
oh,
because everything from these time periods, right? They need these hats and they have to be made custom. So you need a milliner to be around. Um,
hmm,
so it is still in existence. At this time, milliners are going to be very busy.
yeah.
But if people are interested in looking into hat making, especially as a profession, that's the profession you're looking for. It's called millinery. So
Interesting.
anyway, just a tidbit about hat making. I'd looked into it at one point because I thought it was very fascinating many years ago. All right. Then we're going to go into, so I'm going to stop sharing here. We're going to go now into the second letter of the evening. I have to say, I read this letter about a year ago, and this is one of the letters that made me want to make this podcast. It's one of the most epic 18-year-old romance letters I've ever read of just complete relationship drama and troubles. And the way it reads, I think we're just going to dive in so people can really experience this. But this is one of the ones that I remember taking this to other people and saying, you need to read this, and then reading it to them and them being like, this is unbelievable content. So we're just going to jump right in. And at this point, it's from September 28th. So Sweetie is back at Parsons. College has resumed. And so have the troubles with the boyfriend. Sunday, 10:15 a.m. Dear Jean, if I'm not mistaken, and I know I'm not, you owe me a letter. But I need to do some sobbing, and you're the victim. Get a good-sized sponge and a bucket ready. Here we go. I'll have to start way back in order to make this little story coherent and understandable. I think if you'd read back in some or one of my preceding letters, you'd find that I told you this. I got to Ballard at 4:30 Sunday afternoon, and while we were unloading the CNC, Ed walked around the corner with a new freshman and stopped to make necessary introductions and made a date to meet me that night. This freshman, a small, stocky, blond little fellow, is John Messerly from Hartwick, who incidentally knows Max Richmond from Brooklyn and doesn't think a hell of a lot of that guy. He's fast become a good friend of Ed's and mine, and he looks upon Ed in sort of small-town boy-hero worship way, and he sits by me and shares my book in shorthand class. I help him quite a bit, and because of that, and the fact that I'm Ed's steady, I rate pretty high with him. Does that make sense? Well, to continue, I sit right by Ed in 2 classes in chapel, alphabetical order. And for the last few days, he said, "Hi, Kay," and nothing more. He won't talk to me or visit like we used to, and we had so much fun, well, it was beginning to get me down. I'd bitten my fingernails off, forgot a class. No kidding, I actually forgot to go to an English lit class, and now I'll have to take a cut in it. Damn, and in shorthand class Friday, Johnny said, "What's the matter, Kay? You look as though you'd lost your last friend." I said confidentially, "Johnny, I believe I have. Ed has been sick with a cold or flu or something and has missed his classes last Friday." He said that Ed had been sick, and then he said, "What's the matter with you and Ed? I don't see you together at all anymore. Are you fighting again?" I said, "No, we just aren't talking well." That was all. Right then and Friday night, I was feeling pretty creepy, so I decided I'd stroll the 20 blocks to town and back to mail a letter. And so I got down in the lobby. There sat Johnny and another guy waiting on some girls to come down. I'm going to stop here for a moment. She was feeling pretty creepy. So she's literally creeping along, and then what does she do? I'm just going to take a stroll for 20 blocks where
Mm-hmm.
Ed might be while feeling creepy. And also, she missed the class. And she said,
Yeah.
no, like, I actually missed class. She's not focused on class. That's
Mm-mm.
clear. And she's really concerned here about Ed just basically ignoring her. And then
Mm-hmm.
there's this other friend, and he's kind of stuck in the middle. of what's going to go on here. But yeah, the strolling 20 blocks, it was like 1, 2, 20. Let's go up the street. Let me go check on this. Yeah.
Yeah, there was definitely like a little hidden agenda with that.
Yeah, a little. All right, well, we'll continue with the story here so Sweetie can tell us what happens after taking her little 20-block stroll. Johnny asked me where I was going, and I said, I thought I'd just walk to town. And as I got up to start out, he said, Don't feel too badly, Kay. I don't think you should worry too much.
Mm.
I said, Oh no? He said, What makes you think so? I said, Well, I haven't been with him since a week ago tonight, and he won't even talk to me now. He said, I guess I'll see if I can't sort of subtly pump him. I said, You'd better not, but if you do, try to find out just how high I stand with him. He looked at me, and then he put his arm around me big brother style. Though we're just almost exactly the same size, I guess he thought I was going to start shedding tears right there for God and everybody, and he said, Listen, Kay, from what I've heard, you rate the highest ever a girl did. And a good thing he had to leave right then, for no doubt we'd both been knee-deep before very long. Yeah. So she's like, well, please don't please don't bother him, but if you can get information.
Don't do that thing. But if you do,
Yeah. But if you happen to find out, and he's the big brother, like it's gonna be fine. You're fine.
Yeah, but that's so sweet that he's like, oh, he obviously saw that she was hurting.
She was distressed, by a lot going on after her stroll, creeping along, trying to figure out what's going on. And then the story continues for the same night too. I went uptown, monkeyed around, and started back to Ballard, decided I'd stop in at the jail, the college restaurant hangout. And yet I hated like hell to do it, for some damn smooch mad goon always asked me why I don't have a date or where's my steady or something. I walked in and over to some girls and stood talking, and suddenly I felt a yank on my coat tail. I swung around as Ed walked by, but he spoke as he went on. I was pleased that he'd try to make me see him and speak, though he did not seem to hesitate as he made his way back to the booths. I was standing up near the door, and in just a minute or two, here came Johnny breezing in quite a hurry, and he went right back to Ed's booth. Well, I came on home, griped to myself, and went to bed. Saturday night, Johnny at dinner time motioned for me to come and sit beside him on the Davenport. I did, and he said, You'd ought to be spanked, both of you. I said, Why? He said, Well, Ed went out and got on a hell of a drunk last night, and the poor kid had been sick anyway. I took him home, put him to bed, and stayed the night with him. I never felt so sorry for a guy in my life as I did for Ed. You're both so damn bullheaded. You'll not give in. Ed was really drunk, and when I got him home to put him to bed, he was crying because he thought you were giving him the air. He made me promise not to tell you, and when he got up the morning to go home, he hitchhiked. The very first thing he said was, Please, Johnny, don't tell Kay. I don't want her to know that it hurt bad enough to do this. Johnny said to him, Why don't you double date with me Sunday night and try to get this straightened out? Ed said okay and then went home. I suppose he'd probably get back sometime today, but I do not have a date with him so far. We'll just have to wait and see. Yeah, so one night we have Johnny consoling Sweetie, who he's referring to as Kay. So Catherine, she's going to go by Kay, and she's going to be known by that, by various people. And then, like, the next night, he's consoling Ed. They're both just not communicating. And that's the problem.
Well, but you don't.
Right.
When you're 18, when you're 19. Yeah. You don't communicate. You like get your friends to do this. So, it's funny because this is exactly, it's tale as old as time. Right. Like, this is how it is when you're that age.
Yeah. Like, so in the previous, night we have, try to find out information, but don't make it look like I'm trying to find out, but I'd like to find out. And then we've got Ed saying,
and then
don't tell her about this.
Sees her. Mm-hmm. Ed sees her. Right. And doesn't be like, hey, come here. He just like, hey, I'm here too. And then he like walks right by.
I'd be a little disappointed about that too. Like, wait, where are you going?
Yeah.
And he was really upset.
He wanted her to chase him.
Yeah. And she didn't. She just kind of left. So yeah. Some troubles here, a little bit extra drama. And Johnny's seeing right through the whole thing.
Yeah, he's like, and he exactly like
Yeah.
you. He's looking at this and he's like, he knows. Johnny knows. And isn't he younger?
Yeah, I
He's
think
a
he's younger, and
freshman.
he's looking. She's mentioned he looks up to Ed, with that sort of like hero worship. No, he's like, no, you're both bullheaded and stubborn. So that's what's going on here. So at least there's some common sense in the middle here with Johnny, um, but they both can't see what's going on for themselves.
Mm-mm.
I felt terrible about it, but at the same time, I experienced a rather elated feeling. Perhaps he does think something of me after all. I've gone around here for so long trying to. I'm mixing stationery because I want the other to come out even. Talk myself into thinking I didn't care as much as I thought I did, but it doesn't do me a bit of good. And when I say, oh well, who cares? I could kick me good, for I know as well as I know my name that I think more of Ed right now for all his drinking than I ever did before. I want him, drinking and all. And now if I lose him, it will be my fault because I wasn't big enough to take the teasing he's handed out to me the night of our big scrap. I'd like to know just what's the matter with me. I realize I've set some pretty high ideals, but I guess I was laboring under a terrific delusion when I thought Ed could meet those standards. I still think he could, if he just would. Yeah, and then we get to this section, which, Johnny mentions that Ed had really gotten drunk that one night.
Mm-hmm.
And Sweetie is really not okay with the drinking. We're going to find this out as time goes on. But she's suppressing not being okay with that because she loves Ed so much in this moment. And when she
Mm-hmm.
ends with that last line, it's as if she's already realizing that this is really just being hopeful. I mean, we can be hopeful whether or not she's going to stay with Ed. But that line, I still think he could if he just would, is already indicating he's having a trouble with his own self-control. And the drinking is going to be a problem. Now, they do mention the big scrap. So there must have been some sort of big argument that happened. And then Ed got sick. So what happens? Outside we think, oh, they're fighting. And then that's why they're not together. He's just sick. And he was teasing her. And she's reflecting on that. I do really like that she says, at the same time, I have a rather elated feeling. Perhaps he does think something of me after all. So while she's still depressed, she's still very, very hopeful. There's just a lot of mixed emotion going on at this point in the letter.
Well, but I like we talked about in the previous episode, I really like how with the letter writing, it gives you a chance to think about what you did and like it's like a journaling thing. And like you had mentioned, I still think he could if he just would. She's admitting
To
that he
herself.
doesn't.
Yeah.
She's like, he does not at this time.
Right.
I think he could, but at this very
He's not.
time. And so that's the first step. I really think that's the first step for her, like understanding like the kind of person that he is and, and starting to question about what she's wanted. I mean, she went into this school year under the impression that her and Ed might not be together.
Right.
So that's the mentality that she went in with.
Yeah, there's all these other girls at Parsons. She has her inferiority complex. I'm going to get outclassed by these other girls. He might be interested. So the whole idea of being at school is really with regards to him. But she's starting to realize right at the last line, unconsciously or somewhat consciously, there's an issue going on right now, but I'm still hopeful. She's being optimistic. The journaling nature of the letter writing, the cathartic experience of writing down your thoughts. She's really starting to realize how things are and where they might be headed. And we'll continue with the letter here. Well, here I am waiting in a terrified state of suspense and waiting for him to call me up after he comes back. And I think that unless Johnny can get a hold of him, I'll be waiting far into the night. Well, what can I do? I took the first step last time when I called him, and even so, I do have some feeling of pride that will allow only a certain amount of walking on, even by Ed. Yeah, and she even continues that this doesn't seem like it's the first time that there's been an argument, and she's admitting that.
Mm-hmm.
So, my roommate went home this weekend, and in the quiet solitude of my lonely room, and it is just lonesome as can be. I have really worked and toiled. I sent home my laundry, sheets, pillowcases, and bath towels, and did the rest here. Phew. And ironed and cleaned the room for inspection, and washed and fixed my hair, mended my clothes, re-knitted some stocking, and studied to beat hell and write 4 letters, and I really feel as though I'd accomplished something, though I feel I had to do something, or I'd go, slowly but surely start staring mad. Sometimes I hate me, and I really got sick of me when Johnny told me about Ed drunk and crying. That hurt like hell, and I think Johnny meant it to. Yeah, Johnny's just upset with both of them at this moment. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
he's had enough, like, of being stuck in the middle, I think, a little bit there. But we'll continue. Well, I guess I'll quit now. There's enough tears, all you need is a mop. And what a nice clean floor there'd be. I'm hoping and praying I'll get to see and talk with Ed. Rush week begins Monday, and I've already been big into the sorority. I'm not so sure I want to join now. If you don't write me a nice, fat, juicy letter, I'm going to quit writing to you, so there. Love, sweetie. Like my stationery, 100 sheets, 100 envelopes. It is Ritex tweed weave. Ha! Please do me a favor. Burn this letter. It contains a good many personal feelings, rarely expressed military secrets. Please destroy it. Now. Yeah, burn the letter. So,
And she didn't.
yeah, so we wouldn't be seeing any of this today. Jean
Right.
didn't listen. So we do get this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Aunt Jean, for keeping the letter and not burning it as demanded with all the emotional military secrets that are going on there. Yeah. Here for Sweetie. And she's also saying she's probably not going to go into the sorority. But I love these little lines and where she's basically demanding, write me the big letter. I'm going to stop writing. And this is going to be on.
So there. Yeah. I just really like the sibling back and forth of it.
Yeah.
And two, I do like the stationary bit that really cracks me up. She's like, but of course, I mean, she's writing letters all the time. So of course she wants
some good
nice
stationery. Yeah. So they're always going to be looking for where can they get some good paper? Where can they get a good paper deal?
Isn't this good? Ooh, don't you like it?
Yep.
And when her stationery doesn't match.
Oh, right.
But she was like in her room, like just trying to distract herself. Mm-hmm. We've all been there.
Let me do all these chores, which I hate, just to keep my mind busy and active away from thinking about this. Yeah.
I feel bad, but that's where we're leaving Sweetie tonight.
Yeah, we're leaving Sweetie tonight with that. We're going to actually go to another perspective now, and this is the first time in this podcast we're going to hear from somebody else. And I'm going to go ahead and share the screen so we can see who we're going to be hearing from. And that would be Sweetie's parents, specifically to Dr. Demaree. And I think he really just has that doctor look. It's a very intense stare coming out of this photo. Now, Laura Schuler Demaree, she's the mother. And then Dr. Chester Demaree, he graduated in 1913 from Indiana University. So he's been a doctor for a while by the time we get to 1941. And he's working on getting his practice moved over from Keona, Iowa, which is close to Ottumwa, over to Lacona. And after this point, we're going to see the letters really coming out of Lacona, but it's going to be from Keota. In this last little moment, he's buying some medical equipment and he's going to set up shop, and he's going to talk about that a little bit in this letter. But there's something really interesting about just the timing of these letters, and Jean in the middle as the silent person that's receiving everything. So the previous letter that we just heard from Sweetie was dated September 28th of 1941. This letter we're going to hear from Chester is from September 29th of 1941. And even though Sweetie's not at home, she's at Parsons College, and he's not there, Chester seems to have a really good second sense or sixth sense or whatever kind of sense we want to call it for what's really on his daughter's mind. So without further ado, let's hear from Chester for the first time.
1941. Dear Jean, we received your letter today, and as I have several letters to write, I have to pick you out as the most important one to write to, so that you may take some of the responsibility in looking after Sweetie. In order to give you some idea of what we've tried to do about her case, I will state that before school time, Mama and I had many sessions with her to get the situation in hand and help her decide what is best for her. It seemed to Mama and I that the main factor in her case was that of her boyfriend.
I just wanted to pause here real quick because he's a doctor. the main factor in her case. He's going to have a little
Mm-hmm.
relationship diagnosis of his daughter. I love that he calls it her case and is just proceeding forward.
Yes.
Perhaps she does not realize it, but we think without a doubt everything revolves around her boyfriend. I have resigned of giving her a classic education, as I don't think she wants that at all. I am not sure what she wants. It seems to me that some kind of change has come over her since she entered Parsons a year ago. She does not indicate very much interest in anything. When I was home last summer, this summer, there was a strange man that came around and was trying to sell a bogus refresher course in business preparation and half promised her a civil service job in Washington, D.C. And she was taken up with it at once and wanted to do it. I could see that there was not much chance of improvement for her, and I discouraged her about it, but urged her to take some courses in some other business school or go on at Parsons in their business department. Now that she is there, she does not seem so very well satisfied. I feel that she will be unhappy unless her romance is sailing smoothly, and that is what Mama thinks also. Unfortunately, we were only to help her just so much in that, and she will have to go ahead with that herself. I feel that she broods entirely too much about that. I even feel that she has a fear all summer of what might happen, and the anticipation has made chances of her friendship lessened. This is somewhat a vicious cycle, as you have already heard by this time. We would like for you to keep in touch with her and see what she will tell you from time to time, and then tell us about it.
Okay. Jean's caught in the middle. So, just to rewind to the last letter, burn after reading Jean, military secrets included. Day later, Jean, you need to tell us what's going on with Sweetie. We think she's obsessed with her boyfriend. Absolutely accurate. Poor Jean.
It really is.
You know?
It's really funny. Yeah, like poor Jean. And it's really funny too because people like won't talk to each other.
Right.
And it's just, if you would just talk to each other. But he has been trying to talk to Sweetie, and he's been trying to like figure out what's going on. And she is at that time. And I know, like with my kids, especially my daughter is getting older. She's going to be 12 in a couple of weeks, and there's those times when Sweetie's progressing, like she's getting ready to go live her life, you know, and she's been his little daughter for how long, and so I can understand why he worries about her.
And he thinks the best approach is naturally to go in through her closest friend, her sister, so that he can figure out what's going on, but not bother her too much. And then they're also talking about how she's ready to change her mind at a moment about what she wants to do with her future. Right here comes this guy saying, "Oh, you can just go get a civil service job in Washington, D.C." And she's like, "Okay." You know, she's willing to go in any direction. He's like, "I think you should stay at Parsons. This sounds good." But we'll continue with Chester's thoughts here.
You can tell how foolish it is for her to center her attention on one boy at a time. It is good for her to have experience in associations with many boys, and she will get a better idea as to what people are like. It seems strange to me that a healthy young girl like her would have more enthusiasm for life and life's work than she does. When you talk with her, she will not give you the true reasons for her actions and her likes. It is possible she has been giving you wrong impressions of our supervision of her. She seems to have overemphasized personal wrongs and injuries, and we are unable to correct these views, regardless of what we do or say. I am sure that you received some impressions of these this summer when I was at home, but you were more impressed in her favor. She is inclined to lay blame on someone else and to assign causes not related to the real trouble.
Yeah. Basically, again, Jean, find out what's going on here, because we were watching over her, but we can't really relate to her right now. And It's that I remember like how personal wrongs, what he's talking about here. It's probably something very, very minor. I remember when I was a kid, the most minor thing would cause me to be so dramatically upset at my parents for some, you're not allowed to do
Mhm.
this thing. And then I was like, but why? And it's like in the grand picture of things, it's the smallest thing. And it really meant nothing. But it felt at that moment, because you've only experienced life so far, that was the worst thing that could have ever happened. And then the blame's
Yes.
over here. There's not a sense of accountability or ownership. So he's just, confiding this to Gene because he doesn't want to really. There's a danger in pushing a kid away, right? And pushing too hard.
Yeah.
And he is a doctor. He has this really stern mentality. He has a very big personality as a doctor and as an academic. He really wants to make sure his kids that their education's taken care of. At the same time, I think he is very concerned that if he pushes too hard, it'll be too much. So rather than do that, let's use the best friend, the sister Jean, over here to help out.
This fall, Mom and I were inclined to leave her more to herself after all we have tried we could do to help her. We thought we left her fairly comfortably situated and that she would get a lot of good out of school, and your reports seemed to be different from what we had received up until a short time before your letter. I think now that she is there, she'd be better off if she would stay out the term at Parsons. She seems to be getting good course, and we have paid some of her tuition. It is a good, safe place for her to stay. We will try and encourage her more. She will possibly be at home this coming weekend. Last year I could write her 2 or 3 times and not receive any reply at all. But this year she is writing much better. I wonder just what she could do about changing schools. Would she just quit and go on somewhere else regardless of the partly paid tuition and books, etc.? She will have to stick it out until the end of the term anyway. It might do her a lot of good to do it. We've been getting settled down. Mama has been doing a lot of work while I have been at the office. I have not been doing so much, and I cannot say I have been doing so bad. I hope to be able to do about $10 a day within a few months. I have pretty nearly done that several times. I have pretty heavy overhead expenses, and I hope to have good office equipment when I finish it.
Yeah, and this is as he's heading into Lacona, $10 a day. He's hoping to make as the doctor in town. So I have to think about all the cost of healthcare and appointments today. The doctor is expecting to make in 1941 $10 a day, and that's a good day if he can get there. And he has a lot of experience being a town doctor, but they're setting up shop, so he's hoping to get there. So we get an idea as to the salary of what doctors made in towns those days. So we'll continue on from here.
We found that button you inquired about, and I will try to put it in a strong envelope and send it with this letter. Frank seems to have a good job and enjoys the work fine, and is happy that he is able to earn money and pay off some of his debts. I will try to send you the book on diabetes. Perhaps you will not need it until you come home, will you? In that way you can still get it by the time you need it, and we will save the postage besides. I hope that you have not broken your watch again. I think it would be a good thing for you to get a Bakelite crystal for your watch the next time you break the crystal. I had Bob's old watch fixed up the other day and got one of the Bakelite crystals, and it appears to be a glass one, and it is unbreakable. I think it is a good thing for you to be agreeable to everyone. It will broaden your friendships. Learn to be able to get along with people you do not like or are not interested in. Try to know what is right and keep as agreeable as you can when you have your duty to perform.
Yeah. So, oh man, what a great sentiment where he's just saying, here's how you should treat people in life. And just to give some background about what he's addressing here, Gene is in nursing school. So his wife, Laura, she was also a nurse. And so we have this whole side of the family going into the medical profession. And we're going to continue with that in a moment. But I just love the very simple, plain text of someone taking the time to write, here's how you're going to broaden your friendships, learn to be able to get along with people you don't like, that you're not interested in, try to know what is right. Really focus in on good versus bad and things that are just common sense, practical nature. And I love that about Chester, that he doesn't leave this to assumption. He didn't need to write that down. He could have just said, okay, I'm doing great at school. But he's trying to counsel another one of his daughters on how to go about life and how to go about life well. And I love that he just takes the time to really write that here. Here we're going to
go. It's I do like the sentiment of it. Mm-hmm. And it's just such a natural, the advice is so good when you think about it. Just try to know what is right and try to operate in that. And I think that's what, honestly, knowing the both of us, I think that that's something that we try to do.
Oh, yeah.
And keep as agreeable as you can. And sometimes I'm not.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah.
It's hard. But, I mean, you said he graduated in 1913?
Yes, he did. Mm-hmm.
And this was 1940. So how, we really must, you have to, somebody that much wisdom and experience.
Right. He's been through a lot, and he's seen a lot of families. He's seen a lot of strife because he's in the medical profession. And I just love him providing such common sense commentary to his daughter as she's going in and following his footsteps with a medical profession. So, and here he's going to continue right now with what that's like. So we'll continue with him.
I think that you are getting a first-class medical education. You are better educated today than the doctors were in Indiana during the year 1900, and for several years after. I will go farther and say that you are probably getting some of the things that I did not get when I went to school. We did not get very much of a course in dietics. There has also been a great many things that have been discovered and developed since I went to school. You mentioned the probationers. You should try and encourage them and treat them better than they are being treated by the other nurses. I think you will get a great deal of satisfaction from this and enjoy it. You mentioned Meyer's solution. I will be glad to get it, but I would like to very much to know how to use it also. Write the directions down so that you will not forget it.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot in these letters from a lot of parties about writing directions down because they can't just look it up online, of course, for how to do things. But back to the medical evaluation, he's saying, oh my gosh, I was going through to be an MD in 1913. What you're getting in nursing school is going to eclipse what we were taught 40 years earlier. Yeah. So, and he's very, very aware of that. Dietetics also coming in as a course. He's saying flat out, we didn't really study that. So we're studying that now. And then the probationers, probably it was that the nurses were having to treat all different types of people. And he looks to people that might be maybe cast aside a little more than the standard people at the clinic. And he's saying, make sure you take care of them too. So it just shows what a type of person he is as well, who he's trying to teach his daughter, you want to look to this as well. So I love that we get to see a lot of just he has a strong moral compass. Yeah. He's trying to guide his daughters with this. And and then the Meyer solution. Very fun.
Get it. By some hook or crook, I would like for you to get me about 2 ounces each of the following solutions. Maybe you can wait to do this until I see you again. Eosin and hematoxylin. I suppose that I might be able to buy these stains myself. We have not seen Lizzie's for some time. I'm afraid that they live too far away for us to see them very soon, as they are trying to build up and get going. They already realize that a farmer's work is never done. Mom and I are in the office as I write this letter. We will possibly stay here until after the Lewis fight is over. She reads while I write. I like this typewriter very much. I think I made a good bargain when I got it. When I get some carbon paper, I will start writing my general letters again. Of course, you see that this would not be a very good letter to circulate among all the other children. If I get going good here, I will like it much better than I would the Civilian Conservation Corps. I eventually hope to make more than I would make in the Civilian Conservation Corps. I hope to get going soon and have many interesting cases. I will have to finish this letter as I want to write to Frank and possibly some of the others. Maybe Mama will have some more of this to add. Love, Papa.
Yeah, he's happy to have a typewriter. He's talking about the carbon paper. So we talked in the last episode about how people would forward on the letters. He's saying specifically, and I think for very obvious reasons, this is not a letter to be forwarded on and around. But the carbon paper is going to be used in the typewriter so they can make multiple copies of letters and get a general letter written, addressed to everybody, and then sent to multiple parties. So that's the other option, other than just writing the tag at the bottom and forwarding on, is the carbon paper. So they're going to have maybe able to make immediate multiple copies without a copy machine. So if people were wondering how that exactly works, instead of sitting there and typing out every letter one after another, copy after copy, it's the carbon paper. That's what they're going to do. And then he mentions the Civilian Conservation Corps where he had worked. And there's a lot of history here post-depression with Civilian Conservation Corps work. I'm especially appreciative in the National Park Service. I know that a lot of the work of the Civilian Conservation Corps put in a lot of the pathways at some of the national parks. You know, they had a lot of just general work being done, but he did have experience working with that as well.
Do you have, so in some of the letters, have you had carbon paper?
Yeah.
You found carbon paper?
Well, we know.
Yeah. Oh, I can't wait.
I found one that had two. So Jean somehow got both of them. But it's extremely thin paper, right? Because it's multiple layers of copies being made. And I think my dad said it was also called onion paper, because if you're trying to get an idea of what it's like, think about the skin of an onion. And it feels very fragile. It doesn't really rip or anything, but it feels like, you know, it's like tissue paper that you're going to break through it. I couldn't imagine it going through a typewriter, but then again, when it's packed so densely together and you're getting through that, I think that's probably how it worked. But yeah, lots of carbon paper. Definitely lots of carbon paper coming up.
Oh, that's going to be fun to see. That's going to be fun.
And then we have a little tag here coming up for Chester, because he writes Love, Papa, but this is a bit of a trick, because there is one last little note he's going to leave at the end of this letter, and we're going to let Chester continue.
Mama has nothing to add at this time. I would like to ask you how much you asked for the microscope, as I fear you might have asked too much for it. Did you place it on display? I would think that you would have a chance to put it in some bookstore. How about it? We received a letter from Sweetie this morning, and it seems cheerful enough. There seems to be the same old joy and pleasure angle to it, and I don't think any of us should worry about her. Perhaps you should only write your usual letters. We will see what we can do about some money in the near future. We hope that the collections will be good soon. There was something else that I wanted to mention, but I forget what it is. Perhaps I will think of it in my next letter.
Yeah. So then he does a 180. You know what? Maybe we don't even worry about it. She's fine. She's not fine. Yeah. He's still writing this post, you know, we can't exactly tell the timing of the post, at what point Jean's going to receive the letter dated the 28th, and at which point he's writing this tag. Maybe it was a previous letter that we don't have that Sweetie sent over. And he's like, oh, she must be fine, that Chester and Laura kept. Sweetie's in distress, but this 180-degree turn, which is, you know what, never mind. I don't want to put you in this position of having to deal with this, but he is 100% right on point. He knows what's going on.
He knew. Papa knew. Papa knew what she was going through, and it's hard. It's hard to watch your kids go through things, and it's hard to not be able to help them, and so I can understand. But he also, I think he has a really good head on his shoulders, and he is an incredible character, and so it was probably nice for him again to write that letter to Jean and to say, I'm worried about her. And then when he heard from Sweetie, he was like, okay. And he got it out. Yeah.
She's fine. I'm not going to throughout
But
the
it will be interesting to see how the school year
Right,
progresses.
yeah, over at Parsons. And then, so those are the three letters we're going over in this episode. Right before we stop for the evening here, Jamie, I just wanted to go to the website for the Love Sweetie podcast so that people can look to some of the additional content. And this is constantly going to be updated. But just let me go to this, and I'll sort of navigate around just a little bit here. Make sure that you can see the screen. Okay, great. So, for anybody that wants to follow more or go back to some of the photos, especially the photos, the lovesweetiepodcast.com website, very simple. Really, the only two links, the only buttons on the main screen are the podcast, which goes to links to the episodes, and then Sweetie's scrapbook, which is going to expand as time goes on. These two sections are not available yet, but if you go into the family tree and the timeline, you can go and actually get to see a little bit of the background of the characters. So the first two most important are going to be Catherine and Chester, but we also have Laura, Velma Jean, and then Robert Chester, Frank, Edward, and Elizabeth. To which we're going to add Chester refers to Lizzie, so that's Margaret Elizabeth. To this, we're going to add Florence, because we've met Florence just for the first time. And that's what is going to be going on the website, is as the story progresses, more people are going to start showing up on this family tree. But it started in 1941, so that's all we knew at the beginning point. But now we get to add a new character. We'll add Florence in. And we'll be able to see that beautiful picture of her. And I guess that's about it for this episode. Yeah.
Yes, and if anybody wanted to, our social media, we are on X at Love Sweetie Show.
So X doesn't allow for a username longer than 15 characters. So we couldn't take Love Sweetie Podcast. So it's Love Sweetie Show, and announcements are being put out there when new episodes are available. We hope that you're having a great week. We hope that you've been able to listen to this through the week. And then episode 3 is going to be just around the corner.
And so we'll see you next Sunday.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Love Sweetie Podcast. For more information on Sweetie and her life, as well as more information on this podcast, please go to www.lovesweetiepodcast.com. Again, that's www.lovesweetiepodcast.com.